Good afternoon, everyone in the gallery. Thank you for being here, and our viewers and council. Welcome to the November 27th regular council meeting. I call the meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. And I would go to item A, added items, and ask my council if there's any added items. And seeing none then, I would ask for a motion, please, to adopt the agenda as presented. Go ahead, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we accept the agenda for today's regular and closed council meeting for Monday, November 27th, 2023 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz, and I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Moving down now to item 2A, adoption of previous council meeting minutes. We'll start with the regular council meeting minutes of November 13th, 2023. I would ask council at this time if we have consent or if you have questions. We have consent. Thank you. We have consent for the regular council meeting minutes. Next, special council meeting minutes of November 15th. Questions? Consent. We have consent for the special council meeting minutes November 15, and special council meeting minutes of November 22nd. Consent? Council has given consent for special council meeting minutes of November 22nd. Thank you very much. Item number 3, delegations and presentations. Page 11 of your agenda, please. This is the item 3A, and it is the RCMP quarterly report. CEO Williams, would you like to introduce our Staff Sergeant?
Thank you very much. With us today is Staff Sergeant Wright and Special and Constable CRO Mitchell Price.
Thank you very much. Yes, I brought Constable Price with me today to answer any questions related to his position. So you've had a chance, I hope, to review the municipal policing report for our second quarter, which is July 1st to September 30th of 2023, touching on the 4 municipal priorities as provided to the RCMP, as well as there is some other extra material within there concerning staffing and some financial statistics and finances. Stemming from the report, are there any questions?
Thank you. I now open the table for council members if you have any questions for our delegates today. It was an interesting read for sure. And thank you for your letter. We'll start with Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'm just curious, are we just doing his report to start off with, or should we talk about the crime stats as well, or are you going to go into those?
I certainly could do both, whichever. The crime stats within the report itself we can speak to.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question then with regards to page 5 or 6 of your report, which is on page 17 of our agenda.
Yes.
Motor vehicle collisions. I see in July to September. These are only within the town of Olds, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and they're not on the highway. They're just in the town.
just in town.
Okay, so I was just wondering then if you see a trend that is happening. Is there areas of town where there's more prevalent collisions than others? And 36 is at a high amount of collisions? I'm just trying to get a sort of a gauge on that. Sorry.
No, I would say it's on par. I mean, statistically, we're 3% less than we were last year this time. I would say it's just average. We're not seeing any increases in collisions unless, of course, there's inclement weather that comes into town or something like that, which is, it's a causal factor. But in terms of the collisions itself, it's the usual locations in town, intersections, prime intersections, things like that. People perhaps proceeding unsafely.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Just supplemental.
Supplemental, and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. So when you're talking about intersections, are there any key ones that we need to be aware of, or is there any kind of mitigation to try to solve some of the problems, or is it just, people not paying attention?
Well, I mean, certainly that has a large part to play, for sure. It's the same intersections that, of course, all emergency services are attending to, and that's Highway 27 and 2A, and 50th Avenue and 2A, and 57th Avenue and 2A, and, there's been some other collisions at 57th Avenue and 54th Street, and then maybe 54th Street towards the auction mart, that area. Those are the primary locations, and they're pretty consistent.
For that, and now Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to the staff sergeant. Just a quick question on that similar approach with the provincial code traffic violations. They're up 36% year over year. We hear on occasion from our residents visibility and traffic enforcement and so on. I'm just wondering, is there anything in specifics that you could talk to that increase? Is that greater visibility and presence, or just circumstance?
I believe that the increase in traffic offenses, I mean, that's not necessarily the tickets per se that were written, it's just the traffic offenses that were reported to us. I think that there's more, there's been a trend that we're aware of more resident reporting traffic speed within the community, and we're alive to that. As a result, we've created a traffic plan. More specifically, Constable Price behind me has created a traffic plan, which we're planning on implementing December 1st. And I'd like to, if I may, turn over the mic to Constable Price to explain what traffic plan the Olds RCMP is going to do.
So we've been hearing a lot about visibility and traffic enforcement and getting out there. So I've gone through and created a 4-point traffic ops plan that we plan to implement here starting December 1st. So the first part of that's going to be taken on by myself and the peace officer, Erica Gustis. We're going to be working in tandem to increase visibility and enforce traffic within the town of Olds. Our goal is to have tandem patrols with her and I taking place about 3 to 4 times a week, focusing on areas of complaints that she's receiving within town. The second part of this is going to be a Safe Roads, Safe Nights, which we start December 1st. Some of you may have heard of this. There's lots of communities that are running a similar program. This is going to be an overtime shift offered to members who are interested in coming in and solely conducting traffic. These members will not be fielding calls for service and will be expected to be on the road conducting traffic stops for the entirety of their shifts, with the exceptions of completing file work on violations and impaired driving sanctions that they incur during that shift. Any files created through violations of or impaired drivers will be documented at the end of their shift by that member. So we're hoping to have 1 to 3 of these enhanced shifts run per week through December. We'll gather stats on that, and then we can decide moving forward how that looks. The Safe Road shift will be an 8-hour day shift focused on enhancing visibility and making vehicle contacts. So we're looking to set a minimum of 25 to 30 vehicle contacts for that overtime member that shift. For the Safe Nights, it's going to be an 8-hour night shift focused on enhanced visibility and conducting vehicle contacts with an emphasis on our mandatory alcohol screening, so impaired drivers. We're going to try and have those shifts take place from Thursday through Saturday, just because it's a busier time of the evenings for us. We have a lot more people out and consuming alcohol, so we want to keep an eye on those. Third, just with December being a busy month, with the holidays coming upon us and having lots of staff and Christmas parties upcoming for the New Year's as well, we're going to implement multiple check stops. So we're looking to set up multiple check stops throughout the community of Olds beginning December 1st, again to enhance visibility and conduct screening for impaired drivers. And then lastly, the last point on that is just encouragement to our membership that's out there on a day-to-day basis working their normal shifts, and just encourage them to continue with regular traffic stops and issuing violations as required.
Thank you very much for that update. And I have a question, I believe, from Councillor Wilson.
No, I was just going to say, just very briefly, thanks for that four-point plan. And it's, you know, as you've said, and we've heard from our residents, visibility and traffic enforcement. So thanks for reacting to the voices of the citizens. So good. I look forward to the report, I guess, in Q1 as a result of these initiatives.
Very welcome. I have Councillor, Deputy Mayor Cummings, and I believe you're getting ready, Director Andrew, to speak. All right, you're next after him.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we all know, traffic safety has been a big public concern over a long period of time here. And I'm looking at the stats that are on page 24 of our report, which includes the motor vehicle accidents and injuries. Except for the one unfortunate fatality that we occurred this year at the No Frills, I am happy to see the line below that, the injuries and motor vehicle collisions, 2 for the whole year this year so far. And that number dramatically decreasing over even the last 4 years. It's a real indication of how safe our roads are and how few people actually get injured in a town our size. I think that's very good news to see, that we are such a safe community when it comes to our road safety. And I just want to ask one question about that specific line of data. Injuries with motor vehicle collisions, that also includes pedestrian vehicle, bicycle vehicle, every sort of injury involved with a car and anything else as well, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cummings, and now Director Andrew.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments on the report for clarity's sake. In the reporting statistics of the motor vehicle collisions that Staff Sergeant Wright presented, the one piece of background information is when people are involved in any kind of a motor vehicle collision that involves a dollar loss on a public roadway, it is required to be reported for statistical purposes and to get the vehicle repaired. So a lot of those collisions that you see may not have ever constituted an emergency response from RCMP or fire or EMS. They might simply be a small fender bender where 2 vehicles have hit each other, and the fact that $3,000 worth of damage anymore is just about, you know, a marker light on the side of your car, requires that reporting. So those statistics show that there's a lot of collisions when it may not actually be, you know, again, problem areas specifically. And in those cases, and I don't want to speak for Staff Sergeant Wright, but he can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, when we had our single snow event, it might not be out of the norm to see 20 of those occurrences to happen on the same single day. So it's kind of those numbers change greatly based on the time of the year, and the severity is usually a lot less. And when you look at the report that Councillor Cummings just mentioned about the injuries and fatalities, that's probably a more accurate picture to look at as far as, you know, the problem or the concerns of traffic safety and roadways, for sure. So just those 2 little pieces of background for you. The other thing just wanted to call to light was that in previous council meeting where there was some concern raised about some traffic issues in certain locations, since that meeting, the RCMP and municipal enforcement have both been working together in trying to address that and making some more visibility in that specific area, problem area known, and patrolling. And to date, in the time that they've spent, they've found 0 occurrences of any kind of an infraction that would be enforceable. So the problem is, it's not saying that it isn't happening. It's a matter of happening in front of, you know, witnessing by peace officers or police officers to be able to correct it. And so it is always that issue of, yeah, it happens, but not at the exact time that they're there witnessing. So it doesn't mean that they won't go back. It just means that, you know, it's not a prolific problem that's happening every day on a regular basis. It's kind of time dependent. So they'll continue to work on that.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. And Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Staff Sergeant Wright and possibly maybe CRO Price there. When we look at our crime statistics report here and we see all types of offenses listed, and one of the concerns that I've had and comments from some residents in town is they're afraid to report something because of fear of, repercussion from the person that they're reporting. Can you just share what avenues people can report a suspected crime or activity that they might be feeling uncomfortable? I believe if they go through Crime Stoppers or something else, then they remain anonymous. So if you just share that information for those that are listening from the viewing public. And
That's
maybe-
correct. If you go through the conventional channels such as 911 or the RCMP complaint line, in all likelihood, you'll be identified and attached to the file. However, if you wish to truly remain anonymous, really the best way is through the Crime Stoppers program, and you can do that either by telephone call or you can do it online through their website and send them an email describing the subject of the address, the circumstances and event, and then that information does come back to us. We get Crime Stoppers reports all the time.
Perfect. Thank you for that, because I know there's been concerns from citizens that there would be repercussions, as I said. So I appreciate that comment.
Yes, that's a good comment for sure. I'll go to Councillor Daly. I just have one thing I'd like to ask. As you transition through the process right now with your body-worn cameras, will you still have any of your staff wear body cameras? Are they still going to continue to wear body-worn cameras, or
Well,
wait?
currently, we don't have them, so
Okay.
we haven't been wearing them. The last email I read from our commissioner was that they're rolling it out to select divisions within the country, Alberta being one of them, to do what's it called, a trial? Like a field test. And so I honestly think, if I had to guess, we're looking at 2025 before we're wearing them full-time.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Daly had a question.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Through you to Staff Sergeant Wright. I take a different look at your report here on your page 23, or our page, break and enterings. The break and enterings number seems to have really climbed from 2022 to 2023. And is this something that we should do an educational program with our citizens, or is this something out of the norm that maybe has affected this number in elevating it?
This year, we've been experiencing an increase in business break and enters. We know that. And it typically is a select group of individuals at or near the town halls that are committing some of these offenses. And we have been responding to them, and we've been investigating them. And where evidence exists, we prosecute them. That being said, unfortunately, we just simply can't keep them in jail long enough, and then they're out again. The flip side of that is we do have crime prevention by environmental design. It's a program that we brought to Olds that Constable Price did a workshop on with the community.
Yes.
Right, along with fraud prevention. That was in September. And we certainly can run that out again. We have also, have access to a full-time employee by the RCMP in Airdrie that can come up from Airdrie and work with business owners or homeowners with the program, do an assessment on their property, and try to use mitigating strategies to reduce the potential of crime.
Did you have anything further to that, Councillor Daly?
Yes, please. So great news to hear that you got a program in place and so forth. And if not, may I suggest that you work with the Chamber of Commerce on something like an educational session with their membership would be a great avenue to try to push that out even more. So thanks for that.
No, absolutely, great comments, and we'll reach out to the chamber.
Very good. All right. Any further questions? No sharing there. I would ask at this time, please, then, if I could get a motion to accept the report. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council accept the Royal Canadian Mounted Police quarterly report as presented.
And also, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I'm sure you're very busy, and we look forward to seeing you again. Take care. All right, your attention, please, to page 25 of your agenda, item 3B. We have a delegation, and we have Dr. Gord Krebs here to speak. We're moving too fast here, so I'm going to backtrack, please, and we do have a motion on the floor right now for the RCMP presentation from, I'll call the vote. Those in favor? Thank you. Thank you for that point of order. Councillor Daly, thank you very much. 2024 Wheelchair Rugby National Championship, and welcome. You know the process in council chambers, obviously. Welcome to our council chambers.
Well, thank you very much. I think I know the process.
Dr.
Maybe
Gord Krebs.
Yeah, just Gord. Thanks, guys. First, I'd like to thank Marcy. I mean, I did the bad counselor thing and showed up 5 minutes before the meeting started and asked her to make me 2 PowerPoint slides, so I very much appreciate her doing that. Yeah, she's a rock star, so yeah. So the first one's a little video that Marcy's gonna play that explains wheelchair rugby. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or not, maybe not. It used to be called Murder Ball back in the years, and there's a movie about that, and they made them change the name because they couldn't get national funding for something called Murder Ball. So it maybe if Marcy can just play the video, and then do you guys want me to? Do you want to? It's 2 minutes long. Do you want to watch it, and then I can? Okay, then I'll just be quiet and let you watch the video.
Invented in 1977 and originally called Murder Ball, wheelchair rugby made its Paralympic debut at Sydney 2000. The sport is played by mixed teams of men and women. Players score goals by carrying a round ball across the opposition's goal line with at least 2 wheels of their wheelchair on the ground. The field of play is a hardwood court measuring 28 metres by 15 metres. There's an 8-metre goal line at each end, marked by cones. Teams consist of 12 players, with 4 allowed on the court at any one time. Players all have impairments affecting their arms and legs and are classified using a point system measuring functional physical ability. Each individual is scored from 0.5 up to 3.5. The lower the number, the greater the activity limitation. The 4 players on the court cannot exceed a total of 8 points. For each female player on the court, an additional half point is allowed. Defensive positions are usually played by low point players, whilst attacking players often have higher points. They can be distinguished easily by their wheelchairs. Offensive wheelchairs are shorter, with small bumpers and rounded wings, so they can turn and manoeuvre through tight spaces. Defensive wheelchairs are longer and have a wide bumper in front, designed to strike and hold opposing wheelchairs. Games consist of 4 8-minute quarters. If the game is tied at the end of regulation play, 3-minute overtime periods are played. Teams have 12 seconds to move the ball from their court into the opposition's half, and 40 seconds to score a goal, or they must hand over possession. The player in possession must bounce or pass the ball within 10 seconds of receiving it. To pass the ball, players may throw it, roll it, bat it, or bounce it. Kicking the ball is not permitted. This is a full contact sport, and clashes between wheelchairs are very much a part of the game. Hitting and blocking is used by both defensive and offensive teams to stop the ball carrier or to create openings for a goal. However, dangerous contact, such as hitting a player from behind, is generally not permitted. Wheelchair rugby is a fast and furious contact sport that makes for spectacular viewing.
Thank you for that.
So Marcy took it pretty easy on you guys because the video that I had originally, she picked 2 for me. That one's pretty mellow compared to what I'm. So it is full contact, very entertaining to watch. A little bit of background. My son was involved in a motor vehicle accident in July 2022, and he suffered a broken neck. He's a quadriplegic, but fortunately he's got pretty good function of his hands and his arms. So that's where this categorizing system comes into. While my son was in the hospital, he was really, positive and energetic and out trying to help the other people in his ward. So the nurses saw that, so they encouraged us under the table to kind of sneak him out of the hospital and try out for this rugby thing. And when we snuck him out, took him to try out rugby, he loved it. He's an old hockey guy, sports guy for years and years and years. Couldn't get enough contact. So he absolutely fell in love with this. We snuck him in and out of the hospital for about a month, and then he started playing full-time in November of 2022. February, he made the provincial team, and May of last year, we went to the national championships in Moncton. So my wife and I accompanied him there, and while I was there, just probably not being that smart, I volunteered for all kinds of stuff, and I was helping him, put things together and clean up afterwards and do logistics, hauling people around and scorekeeping and all this stuff. And I guess I realized that the more you offer, the more they want. So when I got back from after that, they asked if I would be a director for Wheelchair Sports Alberta. So jumped at the chance because I really enjoy being with this group of people. They're all really positive and outgoing. And right about that time, Alberta was awarded the national championships. So in May of 2024, the national championships are going to be held in Calgary. The biggest cost of that tournament is actually busing. So we have to transport athletes from the airport to the hotel, and then from the hotel to the venue and back and forth. And it sounds simple, but most of the athletes are not able to walk. Some of them are able-bodied, amputees and that kind of things, but most of them are in wheelchairs. So what they did in Moncton, they'd rented city buses, but invariably the buses would have 3 or 4 people on them because that's all they could fit with the wheelchairs, so it was not a very efficient thing. So my request to the town of Olds is, so I told the people at WSA that I had a couple ideas behind it going on the back of my mind. So I have a little mini bus. It was a handy bus that I bought, converted into a motorhome, but I can take it out and I can haul 6 athletes in that. The town of Didsbury has their Lions bus that they've agreed to let me use for the 5 days. The dates are May 16th to 20th, 2024. And I talked to the people with your Sunshine bus, and they suggest I come and ask you if they're, I don't want to take it out of the community if it's being used, but if there's any way that you would consider renting it to Wheelchair Sports Alberta or donating it, lending it to us. If there's anything I can do for the town of Olds promotional-wise, I'd be happy to do that. WSA would be happy to do that. I don't know how it works with you. The Didsbury Lions bus, we're going to pay for the hotel and the meals for the bus driver. I have my Class 1 driver's license. I could drive the Sunshine bus if you guys saw it suitable. Lots of options out there. It's just whether council would consider taking the Sunshine bus out of the community for 3 to 5 days in May. We really need it on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday are the busiest days. So I guess that's what my ask is for you guys. And I'm open to lots of questions. And if it is possible, just tell me what I can do. Cody started curling in Sundre. The Sundre Curling Club wanted to sort of get to be known as maybe the accessible curling capital of Alberta. So they asked him to come out and try it out, and been there once. We're going back today, and they've already put ramps in and whatnot to get him down onto the ice. So I think that's something that they sort of want to promote. So, if there's any way I can help the town of Olds with that, I'll put a logo on the bus or whatever I can do. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I guess I would like to hand this over to my CEO for one moment and ask, is our Sunshine bus even running at this stage?
Currently it is, yeah. We had some mechanical issues this year, but it is back in service.
Yes. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to our CEO Williams. So the ask is for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Typically, our Sunshine bus is not utilized on a Saturday or Sunday. Is it? So this might be something administration could discuss, and it could come back to council for final improvement, correct?
Correct. It only operates 5 days a week, and even in periods when it's either double booked or not available for mechanical issues, there are other accessible buses we share within town. So from an operational perspective, I don't see much of an issue that we couldn't work around. So.
Thank you.
And I do see that's in what we're looking at is to bring it back to a future meeting with more information. Councillor Daly would like to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And through you to CEO Williams, would this be an item that would be fit into our criteria for Montview Power? And instead of maybe looking at sending our bus down to Calgary, would it be something that we could take money from that grant system and pay for a rental in Calgary instead?
I don't know the answer to that right now. I'd have to look into it further, just based on what the criteria is for various streams there. But I'll check on it.
Deputy Mayor Cummings, then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I totally support the use of our bus for this activity. If it's available, I don't see a reason why. Like you said, we have other vehicles that we can use. I'd also like to point out, Gord, that the Horizon School, which I'm part of, has 2 to 3 small buses of the same nature that are not used on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays at all. And we can talk maybe afterwards about getting the right contact people at Horizon School to talk about those buses, because they're actually, yeah, we'll talk offline about that. So it's just another option for some other buses, but I fully support the use of the town's Sunshine Bus in this activity. I'm a member of a military organization for disabled veterans of the same nature, the Soldier On program, so I see this as a very similar program, and I'm fully in support of it.
Yes, I'm sure our council would fully support this if it worked out. That sounds like an excellent opportunity. Before Councillor Ryan speaks, would you like to add to that?
I don't want to get Councillor, but if I could mention, is that the accessible supports for the community? Is that the same 3 buses you're talking about? Or is it called accessible supports for the community, ASC? Is that the 3 buses?
Horizon School is a school for the severely disabled and
Yeah,
olds.
no, sorry
They
about
own their
that.
own 2 buses.
Okay, because I'd be interested in talking about that. ASC is something else that I've approached. I sent an email, accredited support.
Accredited
Yeah,
support for
sorry.
the communities,
I
that's
didn't hear back from them, so I didn't want to bother them anymore, but maybe I've gotten hold of the wrong person, or maybe I can ask it, they'll give me another contact information. Because I think ideally, I'd like to have 4 to 5 buses, just because at the end of a game, there's going to be 2 teams that need to get back to their hotels. And if you're hauling 4 to 6 people, I don't want them waiting around any longer than we have to. But whatever, right, I've got 2 right now. If Sunshine Bus is available, that's 3. If I can find a couple more, that's great.
Make sure, Deputy Mayor Cummings will definitely connect with you either through email, or he'll definitely send you that information. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, and through you to our CEO. I was just wondering how many people can actually fit onto our Sunshine Bus, so make sure that it's usable. I mean, I totally support using it for this kind of a venue if it's available.
I can't recall the exact mix. I know there's some seats and some wheelchair areas, so I'll have to look into that as well. I believe it, not a lot. But.
Sounds like we'd like to support this coming back to you, Mr. Krebs, and of course you'll get a contact from Councillor Cummings as well. And so I'd ask for a motion at this point, please. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Mr. Krebs be thanked for attending and presenting to council, and direct the Chief Administrative Officer to bring back the item for future council meeting.
Did you have anything further you'd like to add?
Can I just
Certainly.
So the bus that I have is very similar to Sunshine Bus, I think, in size, and I can haul 6 wheelchairs, or the seats fold down, so I can haul 3 able-bodied and 4 wheelchairs. So just roughly that's what it is, and I can throw this out there. If you guys would like, I'd really like to do a demo of this somewhere in the county. There's a new team starting up in Red Deer, and we've got our team in Calgary that we can meet halfway and have a little demo. If that's something that make our county known for accessibility. How's that?
I really believe that we would be highly interested in attending that.
One last thing. Official ways are fine, but if anybody needs little questions about this, you can find my phone number in the paper and just give me a call. I'm happy to talk about it.
Is that like the Invictus that...
Yeah, so one of Cody's teammates in Calgary, he's the number 1 #1 ranked wheelchair rugby player in the world, and the guy's unbelievable. They just got back from the Parapan Games last weekend, and they took silver. They won the round robin to beat the USA, and then the USA beat them in the gold medal game. But the Invictus Games are very similar. This is one of the sports of the Invictus Games or of the Paralympics.
Well, very good. Thank you very much. And thank you for yours. We have a motion on the floor. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, yes, you can see it. Okay, we're going to page 32, please, to your bylaws. This is item 4A, and this is our bylaw 2023-37 for the Economic Development Action Committee. And this is looking for all readings today. Our CEO's brought us copious amounts of information. We've brought this back and forth. So is there anything further you want to add before we move into the motions?
Just that the slight amendment was around the membership, and now that the county's been offered a seat, and you'll see that coming up, that is the primary reason for this coming forward.
Thank you very much. At this time, then, I'd ask for first reading of this bylaw. Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Economic Development Action Committee bylaw 2023-37 be given first reading.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Blatz, second reading.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Economic Development Action Committee bylaw number 2023-37 be given second reading.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Councillor Daly, a unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Economic Development Action Committee bylaw 2023-37 be given unanimous consent for presentation of third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Walsh, third and final reading.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Economic Development Action Committee bylaw 2023-37 be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. We will now move down to new business, page 39 of your agenda, please. This is item 5A, Mountain View Power Grant Applications. Would you like to speak to this? Thank you, CAO Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. As per Council's policy and subsequent committee bylaw for Mountain View Power Community Grants, the committee did meet a week before last to adjudicate, I believe, the 11 applications received prior to them, or 10 applications received. Prior to them meeting, 2 under the policy were deemed ineligible because they are eligible under different funding streams through the town, FCSS primarily. And out of the remaining, there was a recommendation that council fund 3 of the applications to complete the entirety of the $50,000 available. And those 3 are on your screen right now for common consideration.
Very good. We'll get right into this. I'll get a motion on the floor. Councillor Ryan.
Mayor Dahl, I move that council approve the Mountain View Community Grant Committee's recommendations as presented, and the 3 are listed. I also do have a question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And I, through you to CEO Williams, since we don't have a counselor on this committee, it'd be good to get a little bit more detail, either through you or through some other avenue, as to why these ones were chosen over some of the other ones. Maybe if we could just get a little bit more detail. Especially, I'd like to know what the curling club would be using the funding for.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure our CEO heard you loud and clear. We still have a motion on the floor. Are there any further questions? Yes, Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, just a question about the ineligibility of both Hope for Mountain View County kids and Olds District Hospice. They are not eligible for operating funding from FCSS. They can get a small grant for volunteer training for their boards and their committees, but to my knowledge, they are not eligible for operating because of their nonprofit status. They're not actually fit within the FCSS criteria.
Yeah, I'm sure our CEO will keep that in mind and bring it back to his staff. Deputy Mayor Cummings?
Sorry, I am a little confused. I thought Councillor Ryan actually asked a question about what these three, or maybe not, maybe I just misunderstood what was being asked. I will ask the question. I'm confused and would like to know specifically what use optimization means in regards to the curling club's application for the $35,000. Yeah, that one kind of confuses me a little bit. So if we can get some clarification on what they're actually asking the $35,000 for before I'm willing to make a vote on this application.
Head CEO Williams?
Okay, so as far as I understand the Curling Club's application to the Mountain View Power, it was the newer board that was elected in conversation with the town decided to, for the first time, permit off-season use of the curling rink floor. To do that, it required protective netting and a few other modifications be installed to obviously protect the surrounding assets. So they received 2 quotes for that netting and other improvements, and the lowest quote was $35,000. So the committee, when they were adjudicated, I was there for most of the meeting, the idea that opening up additional floor space, especially in those shoulder seasons for various user groups, whether that be soccer, baseball, lacrosse, etc., is what was a high priority of need in the community.
Thank you. I do recall you did share that with council as a whole in one of our sit-downs. Is that good and clear? Very good. Now we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Ryan. Are we all good to call the vote? I call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, page 40, please. Item 5B, and this is the town water rebate proposal. And are we going to Director Lindeman? Are you pulling?
Thank you, Mayor. So we're looking to council today for a decision on as to whether or not we issue a rebate for the 4 days that we had the boil water advisory on at the end of October, beginning of November. In the RFD, included in the RFD, we're proposing a 13% rebate, which is the 4 days out of 31. This would translate to approximately 10,000 cubic meters being rebated for a total cost of approximately $31,000. This would be based on November water consumption, so it's just approximate numbers at this point, should council choose to go that route. The average residential homeowner would receive approximately $4.03, and the average non-residential customer $21.76, should council choose to go this route. And I would just open that up to questions from council.
Yes, thank you for that information. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor Duty. Through you to Director Linderman, have we heard of any direction coming from the Water Commission as far as rebates to the town? Our customers were, yes, the ultimate bearer of the brunt of the boil water, and I do agree that there should be some sort of compensation going forward to our citizens, but being that it was the Commission's lack of planning that now that is put on to us, and I just wanted to know if there's any compensation that we've heard of.
Take that one. No, not yet. The town met with the commission last week, and we're still trying to work out the how and what of that event. So, as of right now, no, there's no clear direction on that yet.
Thank you. In that case, my preference would be to receive it for information, but I see we've got Councillor Ryan and Deputy Mayor Cummings with questions as well.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to the CEO. In that case, wouldn't we be better off to wait and see what the response is from the commission? It is their responsibility of this issue, and I think that we should wait to see what kind of response we get from them before we signal rebates. I mean, I know it's 31,000 is not a huge amount of money, but there were other costs that the town incurred due to this event, and I think it would be all part and parcel to that.
And that is why I feel we should do it, receive it for information, but did you still have a question? Or did you have a question? Well, go ahead, Deputy Mayor
Not
Cummings.
necessarily a question, Mayor, just a comment on the concept of rebates under these sort of circumstances. I can't get over the fact that we're going to, if this was something that comes back and we approve a rebate on this water situation, it's $31,000 of tax dollars going to cover a user fee, or $31,000 of a user fee going to pay back a user fee. In the long run here, there's no advantage to anybody for doing this. It's just coming from one pocket and going into another pocket. There's no advantage to the user because that $31,000 still has to come from the revenue we draw from them in the first place. It also sets a bad precedent in my mind that with any sort of system, water, sewer, whatever it is, they will break. And when they break, we repair it. We repair it as quickly as we can. That's our job. But to compensate people for that breakage, again, out of their own money, is kind of pointless. So I would never support this sort of compensation in this matter. If it got to the point where we had to ship water in to supply our citizens with water, I can see us covering the cost of that out of tax dollars. But in a situation like this, I see no purpose to it when all of the recovered funds that would go to the rebate are their money in the first place. So it doesn't logically make any mathematical sense to me at all to process this sort of a thing, and I wouldn't support it if it came back to council.
I believe Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And so further to a point raised by Councillor Cummings, I just want to confirm, this essentially is just a hardship compensation or a compensation for inconvenience. Stop, end of story, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Dahl, and I kind of concur with Councillor Cummings. It doesn't make sense to take money out of tax dollars to pay back money that is generated from people who are using the system in the first place. That's the reason why I want to see what the commission is going to do and if there's any compensation from the commission coming forward, and see whether or not they would be the ones picking up the funds, because otherwise it doesn't really make sense to me either.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I guess a couple of points here. I think that if we are accepting this for information today, and if we have more of if this was going to be approved by council, that we were going to give this rebate, then we would have all of our information ready to bring towards the commission to say, this is our total ask. This is why we are asking for it. Many of our residents were put out that had to go purchase bottled water. I understand that bottled water became kind of a scarcity within the town, and so for some people it was much of a hardship. So I think that going forward, today's goal and objective is to accept this for information, just determine exactly what the actual cost is going to be to the town, approach the commission, and move on from there and bring it back to council for final decision.
I continue to concur that this should be for information only today. Anybody else like to speak? Deputy Mayor Cummings.
Thank you. I do appreciate that this is brought forward for information, but information is good to get clarification on while it's being presented. A few council members have talked about the commission paying for this, but it's the exact same argument I made earlier. The commission is paid by us to provide us water. So if we demand they pay us for the damages to our system and the cost to our system, that's just money going from our taxpayers to the commission back to the town to pay back the commission. It's a circular money flow. It doesn't make any sense to me. So demanding the commission pay for this out of the commission's piggy bank, which is again funded by the town citizens for their water consumption, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's just a circular flow of money. It still comes out of Peter's pocket to pay Paul. I'm just not a very big proponent of that. Again, systems break, systems get damaged, and that's the clarification I like to make sure here, that everybody's aware of where the money comes from the commission and from this rebate.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, and through you to CEO Williams. So when we run off our fire hydrants like we did, that is a cost that comes directly to the town, correct? That doesn't go to our residents per se, because we are running that water. We are being metered by the commission for the money, water that we've had to flow through our meter, fire hydrants. So therefore, although I understand what Councillor Cummings is trying to get at, once we have the actual costs of what this has cost the town, it might not necessarily all be on the residents' dime. So I think this is something that we need to have come back with total costs before we move forward.
Go ahead, CEO Williams.
Just to Councillor Blatz's question, correct, the term I would use is unmetered water out of fire hydrants. It's not connected directly to utility bills. Where that cost comes from is obviously a different pot. On the larger picture of this, Councillor Cummings is correct. We only have one payer and a variety of obviously user fee payers. So this is more of, I think, a philosophical decision, if I had to use a multi-syllable word. If council believes that the situation warrants a rebate, albeit the best we can come up with is this 4-day average of only $4 on average per household, even that amount may be too little to really justify making any effort or decision on it. But if you believe that it's just a inevitable event of running a 40-year-old water system, that at some point things like this happen, then obviously turn it down. But that's why the recommendation is for just to receive our information at this point, and we can bring back whatever council wishes to hear.
Thank you. And I also concur with Councillor Ryan and Deputy Mayor Cummings. I read this and I say to myself, and I heard Councillor Blatz, thank you very much, share the side that it really did affect a lot of residents, but did it affect every resident to have to get a payback? So I look forward to the information coming back. So I have a motion, please, on the floor. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the water rebate report be received for information.
Thank you. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Sorry? Yes, you voted. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. And now we will move forward to page 42 of your agenda, please. Item 5C, and this is the Mountain View County Economic Development Action Committee represented recommendation. And a motion to get this on the floor. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council appoints Mountain View County Councillor Jennifer Lutz to the Economic Development Action Committee for a term of 1 year, starting from November 27th, 2023, and to expire at the town's 2024 organizational meeting.
Thank you very much. And we've had some background on this as well as the request for decisions. So at this point, if there's no questions, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Page 44, please, item 5D. Our 2024 operating budget options. I see Director Linderman's ready here, so take the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. As council knows, the 2024 operating budget was presented last week, Wednesday. Council, coming out of that, council had directed administration to bring back some options on how to fund the deficit with the projects that were being added. So today we have two options. The first one is a tax revenue increase plus using our tax stabilization reserve. With this option, the residential tax rate would decrease because, as was presented, we have a large assessment increase that we're projecting. So the tax rate itself would decrease by 7% on the residential side, and the non-residential would decrease by 3%. This would mean for the average household an average monthly increase of $7.83, and the average monthly increase for the non-residential of $48. The tax revenue increase with this option would be 4.8% or $483,000. And then we would be using $136,000 from our tax stabilization reserve. I'll move on now to option 2, which is purely a tax revenue increase. So this would be an increase of 6.14% to our tax revenue, or $619,000. This would see the tax rate still decrease, so 6% for residential and 1% for non-residential. The average monthly increase would then be $9.92 for residential and $59 for non-residential. And with that, I would just open it up to any questions, I guess, from council.
CEO Williams, go ahead.
I just wanted to supplement Director Lindemann's introduction there, because I had received questions following Wednesday's budget meeting on why tax rates are theoretically decreasing in some scenarios, yet property tax bills will be going up. And that's for those watching mainly, because I'm sure council understands assessment, that the town of Olds has seen 2 years of double-digit increases to a residential assessment, which means people's houses are worth more than they were last year, meaning that if they were to sell their house, they would get more money through that sale. The corresponding impact, if the town doesn't lower its tax rate, people will pay more. And it's up to interpretation whether people put a value or what kind of value people attribute to paying more today versus getting more for their house at the time of disposition or at the time of refinancing, for example, because there's various ways equity can work in a house. So that's the first point, that assessment is increasing. The town's overall tax revenue, in fact, is not increasing through either of these options. We're still flatlining. We're not taking more money than we ever did. In fact, we've been staying stable for quite a while. The second thing is the education property tax. This is the sole driver in option 1 of the non-residential tax component, that municipal taxes are essentially frozen in option 1 for non-residential properties in town. That's commercial and industrial primarily. What's driving it is a substantial increase to the provincial education tax. In option 2, it is still the 90% plus driver of the overall tax impact, but just a little less than option 1. So it's something out of our control entirely. The province tells us what we have to collect out of that pot of non-residential money, and unfortunately, the dollars you see here before you for the non-residential estimates are driven by the province and not the town. Just 2 clarifications.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Just a quick question for the finance director. So if you take 136,000 in tax reserves, is that about half of what our tax reserve balance is?
Correct. So our tax stabilization balance is just over 300,000. So this would be just a little bit under less, or half.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I just wanted to ask Director Lindemann, if you could tell me the projects funded under reserve, so those are not your reserve drawdown. The reserve drawdown that you're talking about is the tax stabilization. Is that correct?
So
And
we-
you would,
Sorry, the reserve we'd be using is the tax stabilization reserve, and these are the projects we've directly linked to,
Oh, okay.
to that 136,000.
okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I was unclear, since CEO Williams had mentioned in our discussions on the operating capital last Wednesday about taking money out of reserve and then plus using the tax stabilization. So that was why I asked that question. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Deputy Mayor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to somebody in administration who could answer the question. The Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund, if, say, we start digging holes in our vapor testing results, we start digging some holes to fix some problems, because we have budgeted some significant money to do so, and all of a sudden we find something in there that's going to cost us a whole lot more money. Can the Tax Stabilization Fund reserve be used for that sort of event, or do we have to draw that from some other source?
Yes, so we have a specific capital reserve for utilities, and that's the reserve that would be used for that source. That's what those monies are restricted for. Potentially, council has the final word if we move money from reserve to reserve, but the tax stabilization reserve right now is restricted strictly for tax stabilization, not for utility use.
Thanks. So a supplemental on that one there, then the only time we can dedicatedly use the tax stabilization reserve is now, when we're dealing with budget discussions, and this is the time to use this reserve or not use this reserve. So if we leave $130,000 or $160,000, $170,000 in the reserve, we would have to transfer that money to another reserve to use it for something else during the tax season. So my concern here is I'm not for option one, I'm for option two, for the simple fact that if we continuously use our reserves, regardless of where the reserves are sitting, for projects that are necessary, we don't allow ourselves that shock absorber that reserve funds are designed for. Either they're designed for absorbing shock, unexpected events that occur throughout the year, or they're for long-term capital planning. We don't do a lot of long-term capital planning, so really it's a shock absorber for us right now. We are not increasing our tax rate where we see so many other communities in the 7, 8, or higher % tax increases. I'm certainly concerned about the financial restraints on people, but even at option two, we're talking $120 a year of an increase, approximately, for our tax rate. So I'm loath to use our reserves in that way. I'd rather us keep our reserves the way they are, and if we do have those types of emergencies, we can draw from that reserve into a fund that can be used. So just as long as the money's not locked in there, we can't use it. That's my only concern.
Councillor Walsh and then Councillor Wilson.
I'm going to suggest that we have restricted reserves, they are locked. And I would not support moving from reserve to reserve. That's just telling the people one thing, then going ahead and doing something else. And I would not support that. I just question, at what point do you implement tax stabilization reserve? We have no guidelines, it seems. Like it's, people have been hit 2 years in a row now. I have no problem using that for what it's intended to use, to help people out. I mean, we got to think holistically. We complain about not having affordable housing, but we keep driving up the price of housing with taxes and utilities. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to reduce the tax rate somewhat, probably not down to 4.6% or 8%, maybe around 5.5, but I would make use of that reserve.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh and Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Just my brief comment, similar to Councillor Walsh. Yeah, I'm not sure what event triggers then accessing the tax reserve stabilization. And to me, I look at it in an extraordinary event, perhaps like losing Sundial may be such an event. And so if either the CAO or the Director of Finance have any sage counsel or advice, but again, in my way of thinking, the fact that we've lost Sundial, which I believe was a $500,000 tax hit, okay, would perhaps be that extraordinary event that would, say, accessing at least some of that tax stabilization. And then just my other comment, as we've said from before with the budget, this is a very blue-collar, working man's budget. There's not a lot of glitz and glamour and bling. It's fundamental and core to what we need to do. I think under either option, the tax increase or the increase in the impact is not overly significant. But again, in my mind, losing Sundial would perhaps be an event that would trigger at least accessing some of the reserves. Although I too am loath to accessing reserves. It's been some time since we've actually replenished and made a deposit into any of our reserves. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I see two more. We'll go with Councillor Ryan and Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I was just wondering through to Director Lindeman, can you tell us what our current mill rate is?
I cannot off the top of my head. We can find it online quickly.
Okay, and then just sort of going off of that, so not really I guess a supplemental, but I was wondering so I think at last week's budget talks, we had mentioned that the increase to the assessment was 14%, is that right? Or was it higher?
Residential is 15%.
15%. So every time so if we're looking at a 6% decrease, then you're lowering the mill rate, correct?
Yes, so the residential tax rate will decrease by 7% in option 1.
Our current mill rate's 5.9511. So, yeah, 0.059511.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of reserves and speaking of using them, I agree with Councillor Cummings in that they are our contingency. They are there for when there is a blip in the system and we need to have access to cash. And that's my belief in a reserve anyway. And as we continue to use the money out of the reserve, especially this one in particular, the tax subsidization reserve, eventually we're going to deplete it. And eventually then we're going to have to look at a probably a higher increase in taxes than what we're looking at now. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's a finite time when we are going to run out of reserve money if we continue to access them over and over again. Reality in life is that everything's becoming more and more expensive. And reality in life is that we need to plan to ensure that we are sustainable going forward into the future. And so I would look at something in between this 4 to 7% that we're looking at, to look at maintaining some sort of stability in our reserves, as well as looking down the road that we can start replenishing some of this as well. And I would rather see a gradual than and all of a sudden 5 years down the road a huge increase in what we have to do to make up for time that we've lost, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Director Linderman. Director Linderman, when was the last time we actually used the tax rate stabilization fund?
We have not drawn from it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you for that.
Theo Williams.
Thanks, Mayor Dahl. And Councillor Walsh brought up a good point that the tax stabilization reserve is there, but the parameters are not of when you should draw on it. And the FACT Council has never drawn on it, I guess to a significant extent, or if at all, shows to perhaps some convolution. The policy, which is 217C, does speak to how it's replenished and its maximum value, which is 3% of the property tax revenue, essentially. If I had to, retroactively apply criteria to it and speak to it right now on a microphone, which I am, it's times when council does not want to increase the mill rate to what it feels it has to increase the mill rate to because of largely factors in the economy and the people who pay the taxes. This is why the option was included. It's such a, I guess, a substantial number, almost 50% of the reserve, that given the inflation that we're facing right now, people are facing the same things, that administration felt it prudent to bring this forward. And even though there's no recommendation in there, I would say our preference, Sheena and I, is that option 1 be utilized. Not that we have to do, we won't have to increase taxes next year regardless, based on how things are going, but it's if you're not going to use it now, I think a question that came up maybe last year was like, when are you going to use it? And why have it at all, so to speak, so.
Well, thank you for that clarification, and I'll take one more. Councillor Ryan?
Hopefully it's not one more, because I probably have more than one. So I'm just going to go back to the mill rate and how it affects taxes. So we're sitting at currently 0.059511 as a mill rate. And if we don't change the mill rate, we're looking at, our residents would be looking at a 15% increase, correct? And then commercial would be what?
I believe it was 3.6% commercial.
3.6%. Okay. So then, without changing it and just going with it, that would give us sufficient money to cover all of the items that were on that project list, as well as putting some money away in reserves, correct?
Correct.
Supplemental? So do we have any idea of how much money would go away into reserves that we need for, especially for our core infrastructure and some of the repairs that are coming down the pipe, so to speak?
I did not bring that information with me today. It was in the presentation on Wednesday.
Okay, it's just supplemental. So I know that it's significant, but the reality is that we have major problems down right now. We have major problems, and they need to be repaired. So do we do it now in little bits and pieces by increasing a 4.8% and doing nothing to build up our reserves to speak to those capital items that we're going to need? Or do we do it, kick it down the road and do more down the road? I don't, I know it's a massive hit, but maybe there needs to be something that has to be discussed and looked at.
Well, that is why the option will be, no, but you have an option to change this motion as well. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through you to, or just a comment I would like to make, I guess. And I can appreciate with the points that Councillor Ryan is bringing up, and as everyone is around the table. And I guess going forward, council should be really discussing how and what we are going to manage our reserves and what we're going to do in the future to ensure that we have adequate reserves in place for that rainy day or that emergence issue that could come forward. But I want to remind every one of us sitting at around this table, we are one taxpayer in this province. And not only do we pay municipal taxes, but we also pay federal and provincial taxes. And we've got to be very cognizant. We may be faced with some very serious issues that we have to deal with and we have to plan for in the future. But we also can't, we've got to take into consideration what we're going to do for our residents. So I think we either determine that we're going to use one of these two options or ask for a third option to come forward at our next council meeting when we determine what we're going to set for our tax rate.
Before I go to Councillor Wilson, did you want to respond? Thank you, Director of Corporate Services.
I just wanted to remind council that we don't actually set the tax rates until April. So preliminary assessment, this is all very preliminary as it is, and it's more just getting a feel, I guess, of what council want. If you want to use the reserve, essentially, is what we're getting the feel of. During spring budget adjustments, this could all be changed as well once the final assessment comes in. If council decides at that point they don't want to use the reserve, we can change that and do full tax at that point when the tax rate is actually set.
Thank you for sharing that for our viewers and council. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and my brief comments, and I think I've made them in the past in one form or the other, but again, our challenge is to balance fiscal responsibility with affordability, along the lines of what Councillor Blatz was mentioning. So I don't want to lose sight of that balance, as I said, between affordability and fiscal responsibility. And as far as because I sit here and I think, well, why don't we just let our increase approximate and approach something like a double-digit increase, which would be very shock and awe, but would be very representative of the dire situation we're in from a revenue and infrastructure perspective. But at the same time, I view property taxes as one of many tools to use, certainly along the lines of affordability for our residents, but also in attracting business. It's not the tool or the be-all and end-all, but it is certainly a tool that can be used to attract investment, development, and that sort of thing. And again, I think investors, when they're looking at a community, they like blandness, they like vanilla, they like consistency, they don't like surprises. Now, whether a significant property tax increase would be a one-off or not, I'm not sure. My crystal ball isn't that good. But again, investors, developers, people that are looking to invest in our community, they want consistency. They don't want a lot of surprises. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. And Deputy Mayor Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I wholeheartedly agree with the comments that Councillor Wilson just said about investors and even people who are looking to move into a community, not wanting that extraordinary events to occur. And I'm going to say that that's probably sewer backups for the entire town, complete loss of water in neighborhoods, water leaking and sewer I&I equaling $2.3 million, I believe Director Lindeman told us during budget discussions. That, in my opinion, will scare off investors a whole lot more and people moving to our community a whole lot more than a tax increase to pay for the repairs necessary in our infrastructure. Too often, politicians, those of us who get elected by our populace, are afraid of that word tax increase, or two words, I guess, that phrase, tax increases. The reality is, just as every household is facing an economic struggle with inflation, so is the town. And year after year, over the last several decades, we have tried to be fiscally responsible to the point where we are not repairing our infrastructure. This year, we have some money put aside to repair some of our infrastructure at the expense of not repairing our major roadworks that we normally do every single year. We need to keep into consideration the fact that a $2.3 million loss on water and sewer is something that's going to deter economic development in our community. It's going to deter people from moving to our community. We have to get this sort of thing under control, and the only way to do that is to spend the money necessary to repair it. The only way to get the money to do that is through fees and taxes, because those are the only revenues we have as a municipality. Councillor Wilson even admitted that this tax is not this budget that we have coming up here. There's nothing special in it. There's nothing extraordinary in it. It is the bare minimum budget. There's no frills. There's no golden arches being constructed. It is the bare minimum that we need to get this stuff done. We cannot continue with bare minimum budgets. We need to plan for the repairs that we need to do next year, which means build reserves. I'm very appreciative of the comments that Councillor Ryan said when she mentioned the fact that we need to start putting money into reserves for next year and the year after for capital renewal. It is not a pretty situation, and everybody knows somebody that's going to be struggling hard with a $120 tax increase, which is the option 2. The option Councillor Ryan had, where we keep our mill rate the same, in my quick math, and correct me if I'm mistaken, is about $360 to $380 of an increase on the average tax bill according to the information that's presented to us today. These are not insurmountable. They could be challenging to some people, but for the average citizen in Olds, it's not. It's how we spend the money that's more important. And I'd rather people who are looking to invest in our community see that we are taking action to rectify the problems that we have with our financial situation. Not sugarcoating it, not hiding the fact that we have financial problems and we have infrastructure problems, but stepping up and saying, we have a problem, we are not funding it correctly, and our taxes need to increase. We are at the lowest margin of our communities that we compare ourselves to in tax rates and average tax bills. And we need to start being more competitive with our neighbors and be proactive in fixing the way we're going. I would like to see, like Councillor Ryan suggested, a third option brought to the table by administration where we keep our mill rate the same and plan for next year's I&I and water loss repairs that are going to be necessary in this budget instead of having to deal with it as an emergency situation next year.
Thank you. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I understand what Councillor Cummings has said, but I think there needs to be a slight correction in some of his comments. We have done some major repairs in the past, and we have been continuing to work on our infrastructure since we've been elected. I know every year we've had a project that we've done some work. I can't speak in the past, but I know it's been done over the years. I've seen the work around town, so I don't want there to be a misconception that the town to date has never done any work. We do have a major problem, and I believe that we've been fully transparent with our residents to state that we have this problem. We are aware of it, and we're faced with a dilemma as to how to tax or what we should do with our taxes, and I don't believe that we've been neglectful or have made the wrong decisions in the past. And so therefore, I just want to make that comment in the public that I really believe that we do have some tough decisions. I'd like to see some options, but as Director Linderman has said, we will not be making this final decision until the tax rate is finalized in April. So we could go around and around and around, but I don't want the citizens of Olds to think that we've done nothing in the past, because that's not quite true.
Just for clarity, I think our strength will be us being together, and whether it's yesterday, today, or tomorrow, that's what we need to be. So what I'm hearing around the table is to accept this, basically direct administration to bring it back to council. So if that's what I'm hearing, I'd ask for a motion, unless you want to add something else. Councillor Walsh?
Yeah, I would make that motion that administration bring back cognizant of council's discussion here today for a further, further debate or information.
Thank you. Did you get that okay, Legislative Clerk? You're good? Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. All right, thank you very much for that discussion, and we'll move now to item 6A, which is actually page 46 of your agenda, and it's your reports from council, boards, and committees. Thank you, Director of Corporate Services, for your time. Okay. Page 46. I'll get a motion on the floor to start, please. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that the reports from council, authorities, boards, committees, and commissions ending November 27th, 2023 be received for information.
Thank you very much. All right, just to get started, we have reports from council, Mayor Dahl, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Wilson in the agenda. So I'll do a round table, and I'll start with Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and if you all had a moment to read this morning, I was a little late in sending my report in, but it was done so this morning, so I have not, it will be attached at the next council meeting. I did also CC our legislative clerk, Marcy McKinnon, on that, so I have nothing further to it to state with that.
Thank you. You could read that on your, is there any highlights you'd like to highlight at all? No? Then I'd move to Deputy Mayor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have three things. I did speak for the first time, or I did join the Chamber of Commerce, the Olds District Chamber of Commerce, for the first time after trying to fill in the shoes of Councillor Wilson, which will be a challenge. It's a very interesting group of fellows, or folks that run the chamber. And the thing that I pulled out of that meeting was their concern about affordable housing in the town of Olds. Two of the members in particular, the owner of our Canadian Tire here in town, mentioned that there were 4 of his staff members living in a local motel because they can't find rental accommodations, as well as one of the business owner who's has one staff member also residing in one of our local hotels because they can't afford or find affordable rental units in town. And it seems to be, from the opinion of most of the business owners that were at the chamber, a issue with every single business that they talk to. Finding employees that they can afford to hire and who can also afford to live in the town. So that's not a new thing to the house. Sorry, not the house. We're not the house. We're the chamber. But certainly something that we have to look at from the business perspective as well, coming to us. The other event that one of the other events I attended was the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group meeting in Drumheller this year. We talked a lot about drought and drought management. The province and Alberta Environment Protection is anticipating severe to extreme drought in the southern and northern portions of our province, and a relatively strong drought in the central part of our province, which is not good. Of course, that's going to have implications, thank you, I got stuck on the word there, for our entire community. The talk is severe enough that they have already banned all new water rights to draw water from all of our waterways in Alberta. So no new water licenses will be issued. They're talking about canceling some water licenses that have been issued. Now that's a very severe thing that has not been done ever before. So we can guarantee that we're going to see water restrictions put on everybody in the province. And we are lucky enough that in Olds we have a senior water license out of the Red Deer River Water Basin, so there will be low probability of us losing or having restrictions on our water license, but not our neighbors, which will have reductions in their water licenses. So that's a pretty severe thing, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better in the near future, but it does speak to Red Deer River Municipal Users Group advocacy for building another water reservoir on the Red Deer River between Red Deer and Drumheller to mitigate these sort of events. Of course, that's, even if we start today, that's not going to be till 2035. The other thing was the Coffee with Council event that we held at the Legion this past week, where I heard a term I've never heard before by a resident, which was I'm sorry, I'll probably butcher the pronunciation of this type of doctor, gerontologist. She asked if we had any gerontologists in the town of Olds. I had to ask her what a gerontologist was. She's a retired nurse from Red Deer. She explained to me that it is a doctor for senior citizens, and was curious, in a community of our size and our nature, where we do have a large seniors population, a large retiree population, do we have any gerontologists? We've talked a lot about, I'm sure Councillor Daly and his organization or committee that he's on has talked a lot about doctors in general. But I was curious if we've ever had the discussion about a gerontologist specialist working in Olds. So it's kind of an interesting glitch. So the rest of the stuff that I heard at the Coffee with Council was the stuff that we'd always hear about: traffic safety, traffic safety, traffic safety. But I did want to bring that one up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you, Mayor. A few key highlights. I attended all council meetings and special council meetings over the past month. Again, the Library Board, November 15th. Fairly light meeting, Shauna Cervani was elected chair again, so that continues on. Talked about our fundraiser at the Comedy Hour. I only brought in 1,300 net, but our next one will be Banff Film Festival on January 26th, so put that in your calendar. That's always a great event, and it usually gets sold out, so it's at the theater. And my first meeting with Parkland Regional Library Service was November 16th. They approved their budget. I think it's in the minutes here. Also, it's interesting, the same discussion, COLA. They're moving to a 5-year average for COLA. So a 5-year average right now is 3.5%. So that's what they'll be recommending. And they've changed their pay grid from 15 down to 9, which means about a $40,000 increase to their budget that will not happen until 2025 because their budget's already set for this year. And there's going to be a great debate on February board meeting, those for opening the agreement and those against. So it's coming back to the board for everybody to listen to both sides. I attended the coffee at the Legion on the 17th of November. And again, the people who attend these do appreciate it. November 23rd, SRD met for an appraisal of our CAO. But on October 30th, SRD had a meeting where we did discuss olds and the cost of either a pipeline out to our lagoon systems, retention pond closer to our lift station, or do nothing. And I actually advocated for doing nothing, spending $4 million or $10 million, or upgrading to use our lagoon system would be $30 million. But I think for the time being, I'm suggesting that we maintain the status quo and see how Olds performs in reducing its I&I. Because if we're successful there, there is no increase demand on the system because it's under operating now for what it was designed for. So going forward, and Councillor Ryan was at the meeting, and good luck in the future, Councillor Ryan, on that committee. That's about all I have to report.
You, Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor. I also submitted a report to Marcy to be included in the minutes of this meeting. The one highlight I would like to make is that I attended the Minister's Economic Dinner in Edmonton with the Economic Development Officer here from the town of Olds. This dinner was an event where it was kind of like speed dating, where we all sat at a table and representatives from the minister's offices would rotate every 10 minutes, and there was usually 3 to 4 communities sitting at each table, and the minister's representatives would take notes from the different communities that were present there at the table. So very interesting hearing from the other communities, as well as hearing some of the thoughts of the representatives from the minister's office as well. It was very well attended. The room was full, and yeah, I think it was well worth just making those contacts and reaching out to those people in the provincial side. So a wealth of information shared in that evening amongst the tables. Other than that, I think my report is fairly brief and to the point that it will be submitted. All right.
Very much for all your reports. Just wanted to add, I did circulate throughout all council baskets some information for our citizens if you needed it, for access to food guide that I received when we had our mayor's walk. There are a lot of things on here that actually educated me, so I hope if you have any questions, you certainly can share your updates with any community members that need. And also we have our light up parade, or Santa parade, light up parade on Saturday. Just another reminder for the viewers, and I'm sure there's more information coming for you, and you can check your local website or paper, I'm sure. And we have a motion on the floor, so if there's no further questions from council. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I would just mention, plug one or two events, if I may. One is the Battle of the Broncos tomorrow, which is in support of the Mountain View Emergency Shelter. Great event at the Sportsplex at 7 p.m. with a donation. And on December 6th, the Cole High School will have their Christmas Palooza bake sale in support of the Olsen District Christmas Angels. So 2 great events. Hopefully people will get out and chance to support.
Well, thank you for bringing that up as well. And it is all on our website, just so everybody is aware. And I will now call for the vote to accept for information. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We'll move now down to page 66 with our Chief Administrative Officer report.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Just 4 things on my list. First thing, as I mentioned previously, the meetings with the Regional Water Commission have started, and I hope to have something in written form to provide council and therefore the public today. But fortunately, we're still working out the how and whys of the boil water advisory, primarily on the mechanical side. So there's a bit more information to figure out before we put something forward. But it should not be much longer than a few more weeks to have that for you. We received a note on Friday that we were approved for the municipal internship funding through Municipal Affairs, so that does relate to the upcoming, or recent and upcoming budget conversations. Solid waste collection. Council has reviewed the service level previously several times in closed session, and we did have a request for proposals close. So I take this time to announce officially that starting January 1st, the town of Olds will be switching its carrier provider for solid waste collection. Right now, Waste Connections holds the contract, and we are looking to switch to a company that will be named here shortly. With that, there will be adjustments to the service level. Our 3-week rotation is going to be replaced by every 2-week rotation for black bins and blue bins. That is 12 months of the year. Every second week, black bins and blue bins will be picked up on a bi-weekly basis. Green bins, the seasonal suspension is still in effect, with the caveat that in early January there will be 1 pickup of green bins for all residences to offset that 6-month hiatus, which we believe with the reduced usage during the winter months, that 1 pickup at the 3-month mark, at the end of the 3-month mark, should be sufficient for the majority of households to get compost through to the spring. Change to green bin rollouts come springtime, tentatively mid-April, that those will be picked up on a weekly basis between April and tentatively early November. Those dates remain flexible based on the type of spring and fall weather we have. The community green bins, of which this year there were 40 3-yard bins in the community, those will be discontinued. We will no longer offer that service and feel that the weekly green bin pickup is a suitable replacement, and this will help us quite a bit with the non-compliance, illegal dumping issues we've had and the subsequent staff commitment those take. And then the recycling center, which was a key topic of conversation on our budget engagement survey this fall, where the vast majority of residents says they were not willing to pay more for that service, though that center will not be reopened in 2024 under this new service level. So there will be communication going out by, we hope, the end of this week, once our community pickup calendar is finalized for 2024 with these changes going forward. And with the reduction in recycling costs, which as we all know have increased substantially, and the new tender and the switched provider, the monthly utility bill for solid waste will increase just 70 cents for households. So this is an increase to the service level, reducing some of those communal drop-off points, which are a bone of contention and a service level hassle, if I was being blunt about it, with the residential pickup going from a 3-week schedule to a 2-week schedule and weekly for green bins. We hope that it will increase the satisfaction level of the residents and plus help us reduce that staff time with the illegal dumping and non-compliance that we continually see. And the last thing, I would like council to consider having an emergent motion made to direct the mayor to write a letter to Minister of Transportation Devin Dreeshen requesting a meeting to discuss our ongoing infrastructure challenges related to wastewater. If that is out of turn, then I can bring it back to a future meeting with a proper RFD. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our CEO to his report? All right, as per your emergent motion, we will go ahead and make the motion to receive your report for information, and then I will ask council if they're willing to make that motion. I see no reason not to, but we will move forward. Any motion, please, to accept for information? Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the Chief Administrative Officer report be accepted for information.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? Thank you. This, could we put the emergent motion now after this one, or do we have to add it to the bottom of the agenda? We should be able to do it now. Yeah. Okay. Does council, do I have consensus for, yes, Deputy Mayor Cummings?
If you're looking for the motion, I'll make the motion.
Looking for consensus from all council? And we have it, so please move forward, Deputy Mayor Cummings, with the motion.
Thank you, and I'll forget the name already. Devin Dreeshen. That's just too long of a name. All right, so I'll make a motion that council direct the mayor to write a letter to the Minister Dreeshen asking for a meeting to discuss our infrastructure, capital renewal issues, specifically related to wastewater.
Thank you. Our CAO Williams will prepare that, and we will move forward with that if council wishes. I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, CAO Williams. Move forward with that. And correspondence and information, our last item before we move into close. Motion on the floor, please. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the correspondence and information report ending November 27th, 2023 be received for information.
Thank you. I thank Hospice for the lengthy newsletter. It's very good, and also a reminder date of the next Hospice Walk coming up. No questions? I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We will be moving into a closed session. I would ask a motion from council, please, to move into closed. And I would just add that item 1 is now public at-large appointments for the Olds Municipal Library and the Economic Development Action Committee. But a motion to move into closed, Deputy Mayor Cummings, at 2:45 p.m. Can you state? Yes. All present at this time, other than our media person. Thank you very much for coming, Doug. Perhaps you could close the door behind us if you're on your way out. Thank you, sir. You can move forward with the motion. Who's making that motion? Oh,
Sorry, I am there. I just had to bring up the page for myself.
okay. There's 3 items.
Yep, so I move the council move into closed session at 2:46 PM to discuss item 1 under FOIP Section 17, disclosure harmful to personal privacy, public at large appointments for the Olds Municipal Library Board and for the Economic Development Action Committee. Thank you. Item 2, which is under FOIP Section 25, disclosure harmful to economic and other interests of a public body, Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee update. And item number 3, the FOIP Section 25, disclosure harmful to economic and other interests of a public body, the Mountain View Senior Housing Board update with all currently present in chamber attending.
Thank you, and I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And we'll take Thank you, and welcome back to November 27th meeting. We have now reconvened back to regular council for our Rise and Report session, and I will call on Deputy Mayor Cummings for item 1.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have a motion here. We're going to move that council appoint Megan Unger for a 2-year term on the library board to expire at the 2025 organizational meeting for the town of Olds.
I would suggest separately. Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Cummings. We will vote on that appointment. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, just a moment. We're going to do the second one. Okay, I got it now, and I've got it written down differently. So we're going to vote on the Olds Municipal Library appointment. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Carry on, please, for Economic Development Action Committee.
Thank you. I move that council appoint Kelly Kurlik for a 1-year term on our Economic Development Advisory Committee to expire at the organizational meeting in 2024.
Thank you for that. Everybody's 1 year. We're all good. Thank you. And now I will call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Cummings. And now item 2, please, for Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accept the Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee update for information.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Blatz. I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And item 3, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council accepts the report from, or the update from Mountain View Seniors Housing for information.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. And I will now adjourn the meeting at 3:26. Thank you for coming.